Good morning, good day. Speaking to you is your friend on this day of February 6, 2021. Engineer Suraj Singh, Mahinda Suraj Singh, Abhyanta Suraj Singh. I'm calling engineer in English, Abhyanta in Hindi, and Mahindas in Arabic. Engineer in French. Sometime fresh your mind, that's important. Important is we have to involve ourselves in various activities which is important in life. All activities cannot be done simultaneously, but we should try to do our best to do something this way or that way. This is engineering. It doesn't mean one should be engineer to understand engineering. You can be engineer, you cannot be engineer, it's up to you. But methodology is necessary to be understood. When I say again and again, I explain this time again and again what is engineering, what we have to see, what we have not to see, what is important in life, and what is not important in life, we can decide ourselves. Everybody decides. But engineering is having its own domain, universal domain, we can say again, I say universal domain. It's not limited to our country or your country. It's applicable, it's done all over the world. And it was done all over universe. Sometimes maybe I don't know when, but we can imagine only. It was done universally. It was done universally and was done all over the world. That's beauty of engineering. Because universe was also engineered sometimes in beginning. We cannot say which era, which date. And we know only what's happening on Earth, this small planet. How many universes are there, how many solar systems are there, we cannot say. I don't have knowledge of that. But I know there is a universe and there are universes, not only universe. And there must be someone who built all that. He built in one go or in sequence or in what program, only that power knows. We can call that universal power or God or whatever you can say, it's up to you. That engineering is vast, very, very vast. I refresh all this because it's necessary to refresh sometimes. Such a site which is called sky, you can say a plant which is called sky, a area which is called sky, or a project that is called sky, or universes. If you consider that also as a project, though it's not in our control, it's beyond our control and beyond our imaginations and beyond everything that we think of. It's beyond everything. But even then it exists. We can't deny this fact. We can't deny that vistas of sky exist. Or you may call it mirage of sky exists, or horizon of sky exists, whatever you can call it. All are beyond our control, beyond our imagination. That is true. That is true. All is beyond our imagination, yet we think it's something we have to carry on. Without existence of all these, we can't survive because there is a balance, there's a state of equilibrium, dynamic equilibrium or static equilibrium or unknown equilibrium that exists everywhere, due to which we also belong to it, and we survive because of that. If we compare that engineering to this engineering which we are talking of, I think there is no way we can say we are doing engineering, because this is very, very tiny particle, tiny ratio of what I'm talking of. Though I cannot reach there, I cannot view it, from reality. Only from here we can view how many stars are there available in skies. Nobody knows what skill they are, what distances center to center each are having, and how many solar systems are there. Only it is imaginary and it is beyond complete imagination. I think we are not advanced to that level, and we may not also advance in near future. So we have keep ourselves restricted to very small scale of engineering, and that we think as engineering on this earth. But it's a part of all engineering because we are supported by nature to do engineering. No engineering can be done if nature does not exist. If earth does not give us original resources, raw resources, no engineering can be affected. If there is no air, no water, no sun rays, or you can say no fire, no heat, no snow, no rain, engineering cannot exist. That's important point because we have to draw benefits from each individual and in totality all agencies from nature. This is what is we have to do. It's not in isolation. We are not in isolation. We are though isolated, but we integrate with the universe. And if you think that way, I think we can understand it in a best way. When we talk of mind, that is related to engineering, and without application of mind, there can be nothing done. Engineering or some other profession or subject or work. You cannot deny this fact that mind has no image, mind has no diagram, mind has medical circuit, but we cannot know how mind works. Mind works very fast. It works much more than something else, anything else, and whatever it sees, whatever it watches, whatever it views all time, it keeps in its memory, and that memory tells us all time what one does or did in that era, in that year, in that time. So you can say there is actually body engineering, there is actually earth engineering, there is actually universe engineering. All are engineering. Some we learned, some we do not learn. We learned in university, that's very small part of engineering because in a couple of years we cannot know whole world of engineering, and even in whole life of 60, 70, 80 years one cannot know what is reality and what is truth. Yet there is a relation to everything. There is a relation to every aspect of life, and that relation, you can say, whatever engineering we do, this is relative engineering, this is not real engineering. Because we are using everything that is available and we are not making something which we can say it's our make. It's not our make. We are just user, just like you say end user. We can say we are end user of natural materials, natural products. You may not call it product because this is a material that is in raw form, and we use it, and God allows us to use if we do not abuse that. It's very easy to understand, and it's also not very easy to understand. Both aspects are there. It in that sense, which aspect we are talking and which aspect we should think of. When we say nature did engineering, I think we cannot reach to that level to really understand what did nature do to make this universe. How it could be designed, how it could be worked out, and how then after designation of these plots, or you can say drawings of universe, implementation might be a big question, because when there was nothing in universe, probably only sky color, wherefrom so voluminous material could be collected in different densities and different units. And where is that source? That's a point. We have all planets, and then we have all solar systems. Where matter came from, how it could happen, this is beyond our imagination. This means our mind is not perfect in that sense. We can import information from that source because that source is secret to humanity. Yet we cannot deny this fact that universes exist. We only know what is earth, we only know what is sky, and because we are restricted to moving in air as human being, we cannot reach those levels, and we have to stay here only on earth and talk of everything and think and designate ourselves that we are intellectuals, we are brilliant, we are dynamic only in our, it's like parrot talk. We think we are intelligent because we do something calculative, and we think this only intellectuals can do. So we are intellectual, you can say, in a sense of relation. We have related to intellectualism. The real intellectualism we do not know. We do not work on real intellectualism. That's another part of life. We have brain, we have body, we work, we think, we do. If we use this body, if we can think, if you can work, it doesn't amount that you are hard worker or you are smart worker or you are intelligent. Yes, to some extent we can say, if we are given all resources, all original sources, otherwise we would not have done anything. If suppose I have only head, no body, I am useless, I am dead. Similarly, if this earth does not have materials, then this earth shall not function for me. But everything is happening. Body is working, mind is working, earth is working, everything is working. But we think we are intellectuals, we know everything. In fact, we know nothing. We know only what we see and observe. We call scientists and engineers and we say scientists do this and do that. Engineers do this and do that. In fact, we do not do anything except we use something. Scientists observe universe working and they find out, once they understand system, they write something and inform something, that this research tells this is happening like this. They do not add anything to that. They do not, they do not enrich that observe that happening, what universe is working, but they only observe that system, and observing that system, when you understand, is known as science, means knowledge that is available in nature. When you understand that knowledge, you can say this is a part of science. And when we understand that and we get information, means how could it be doing? And if we understand that, if we realize that this could be a way, in a small, minute way, we can say it can be done. So we do it like that, and that's called a kind of a type of engineering. Well, I always say engineer is very proud or prideful term. It's of course, if we take into our way, means if you compare it to humanity, it's of course very brilliant word, because it relates to intelligence. It relates to work of mind. It relates to how powerful you can work on earth. Otherwise, it has got no value at all, because we cannot do anything ourselves in original. We use only, this mind is not built by me, not built by anybody, it's built by God, this body is built by God. So God has already given me some reference, some source, some resource that I have to use, like we get computer, hardware and software. We use them and call end user, and we claim I am IT user. Same way I can say I am God body user, I am God universe user, I am God earth user. That's only I can claim and you can claim. Other than this we cannot claim anything. So what I mean to say, when we talk of nature, we talk of something, we have to be very brilliant, and we should keep pride off from our thinking level. There is no question of only pride. Only pride you can say that I'm not wasting time. We are not wasting time. We are trying to understand the energy given to us is very significant. This energy that God provided us is a wealth, you can say. Energy, if you have mental energy, physical energy, particularly if your mental energy is supported by physical energy, so that physical energy keep its all time refreshing. And if your mental power, mental energy, you can enjoy your mental energy by doing a lot of work, by thinking, by intensifying your mind, and you can, enter into different worlds all time, because that world is available around your mind and our brain, and we can get information whatever it should do. I think this is different kind of talk I am making, but it is related to structural in work. It is related to engineering, because we use mind, we use this. If we are mind, our minds are not fresh all time. If we don't keep fresh mind, I think we sleep otherwise, or we feel that fatigue with us, or we are, we become tired and lazy and lethargic, and that state doesn't help anyone. If you have to work in engineering, I think it's the best is that it's not if you use mind, if you use mind dedicatedly, devotedly, you can move yourself into different sea or ocean around your mind. It's not water ocean, it's not water body, it's your mental ocean, which can be much more wider, which can have much more bigger size than your ocean of world. And that, when we say, oh, I'm immersed in this thought, I'm immersed in this question and answer session, and you immerse yourself in that, means you generate your own, you talk to your own, you deliberate in your own self, yourself. You move inside your own, thinking that everybody is inside you, and you think that what you are saying, you're talking to yourself. You are best person to think of world and think of engineering, because engineering stimulation is so strong, it's so dynamic, that it informs you many options. It gives you many options, many alternatives, and also tells merits and demerits of all those alternatives, probabilities which we adopt in our work. When we design, we cannot simply say, jump to detailed design. When we design something, we consider many options, how I should move on this path. I know I have this destiny to do, but can I do that? While you think framing, for example, we say framing in a structure, or you can say planning in architecture, architectural plan or structural framing. These are both related, but we should stop habit of doing very common work. We should stop doing work in a way everybody does. Innovation is very important to be, you can say, incorporated. If we think, and we twist from thinking and think in a different way, and then further twist and think in a different way, or we deflect as a whole and find another way and try that. So trial and error, you can say practically, and then we can say we have to relate it to other. For example, with the trial on architectural plan, okay, we put window here, door here, or direction is that, and ventilation here, and then we have to see, okay, plan is very nice, I like it, it's attractive, beautiful, but how best structure fits in that time when you do the architectural thinking, when you do planning, or you can say I'm doing plan of one building, and that time also immediately I am thinking of how shall I frame it. I think that is best coordinated way of doing something. If you say no, let me finish this plan first and I'll think later on how to evaluate, I think that's nothing but waste of time, because architectural mind says one thing while structural approach speaks something else. That point, that point, changes our architectural idea or makes difference than what you thought before. And when work on structure, structure tells something else. So that way I can say we have very different kind of act in ourselves. Of course, we repeat that again and again. We relate to requirement of architectural work, and when connected to structural understanding, some changes are made here and there. In fact, not some changes, drastical changes are made here and there, because when both disciplines talk to each other, they talk different language. They do not conflict with each other, they understand each other. But professionals do not understand each other. That's only difference. Subjects understand each other, they intercoordinate. Wall can tell you where I am, and column where should it be, beam where should it be. When we contemplate that way, we can say yes, it is different world. Of course, some people are right, some people are not right. But when I'm saying engineering, when I do engineering, it's not because I have to make money, that's another part of engineering. But what I have to produce is more important. How best it is, how equilibrium position it is having, how much stability this is having, and what level of risk it gives. Is it going to lose its center of gravity? It's going to twist, or it's going to sway, or it's going to invite torsion. All these points which are very significant from the point of engineering and profession of structural engineering, profession of architectural engineering. Architectural requirement, structure gives, structure supports, and structural requirements all others should support. Conflict free. If conflict exists, means it's not what for conflict, I don't understand. It is a structure that carries weight, that carries load, that carried actions, that carried forces. And you cannot avoid those forces even if you are architect or whoever you are. These forces can be used to best performance but cannot be avoided at all. These are a must, because only way is that you can distribute them to easiest way, you can say, so that your structure works in very easy way. It is not very much complicated, it's easy. It's on line of action of center of gravity. Just we call when we design, means I'm just referring, when we design approach remains that there is a load CG on a building, and this can be horizontal load, vertical load, or inclined load, whatever load. There is a load CG in general. You can say center point of loads, all loads of forces, and then there is a center point of plan area of that. And we just consider that both should be at the same point. There should be no eccentricity among these 2 points, between these 2 points, because this eccentricity may lead to, you can say, building being out of line, disturbed, vibrate, or you can say it takes time for it to come back to situation of equilibrium. It's very important, I'm saying, people don't understand, and it's very common consideration in engineering that your center of gravity of all loads and center of gravity of your design plan, to maximum extent it is affected, that we have to keep them within limits so that building does not go out of line at center of gravity. Both should remain intact as much as possible, and if there is a gap, we should minimum, or if there is much gap cannot avoid, then you have to provide different type of structure. so that the eccentric loading and eccentric movement is contained. That's basics of very much, it may be high rise tower, it may be you can say bridge, it can be wherever you see where load is involved, actions are involved. These actions must be balanced together. When you walk on road, on footpath, you find different type of forces on yourself. You say, oh, I'm not walking very smoothly, I don't I'm taking equal steps and I'm walking in a straight line. And you find not that you're not tired, you keep yourself vertical now, and your weight, it doesn't is vertical, but your line of motion is this direction or that direction. You are doing a work, but technically speaking, you are doing work only not of your weight, but a weight which is equal to your weight into coefficient of friction between surface on which you are walking and your soul. So that is, I can say, work is equal to that coefficient of friction between your sole and surface multiplied by your weight, and that's your real weight in direction of motion, and you how many meters you walk, and you multiply that force or weight, horizontal direction weight, into that distance you travel. We call it work done, like that. So we have to do work, that's the point, and we have to measure the work as well. Same way, we should not forget that building is also a live element, is live body. It's not, you can say, dead body. So this we consider dead for permanent, not for death. When we say dead load means permanent load which cannot be removed, which is permanent forever, and you cannot take out that load until you change the structure. So we have to be very innovative in this aspect, that there are different types of loadings, different type of actions on structure, and those must be worked out properly, and that's what do. This is a part of design, of course, but in contracts also, when we do say, okay, this part you can do design, or whole design you can do, and in that case, construction contracts becomes EPC contracts. EPC, engineering, procurement, construction, and where design also goes to scope of contractor work. I'm trying to make this background because you should understand difference in construction contract and EPC. Both are contracts indeed. Construction contract exclusively works for construction only, where designs are provided by employer or by engineer. And in EPC, its design is also included in the scope of work, in addition to carrying out all in this design. Inclusive contract is called EPC, engineering, procurement, construction contract. These are very important point of difference. I'm talking of lump sum fixed price contracts, and these contracts we have to live with. Only point is we have to be clear about contracts, which is a very important point in engineering. After all, these are all engineering contracts, though we don't write engineering contract, because if you write engineering contract, people think it's a service of engineering. We are not saying that. We are, you can say, kind of industry or manufacturer of buildings or structures, and that means sometimes you may have design in your scope, sometimes you just follow design and implement that work. So there's a different approach here. We have to take it that way. Why I am telling you all background? Because background is also important in long discussions, long talk. Engineering cannot be taken for granted, as people have started doing this. If you measure engineering only to money weight, then you will not like to become engineer, because engineer does not mean you are a human being to make money only by your profession or through your profession. That's not acceptable one. If everybody thinks that way, whole world will change. If you compare everything in money matters, then it doesn't mean anything, because life is not money alone. Money is one part of life, but there are so many other parts of life. So what I mean to say that what I mean to say that when we concentrate on engineering, and not like God concentrated, but just human being we concentrate, and we proclaim ourselves engineers, well, that's fine. Means you have some identification for that person's engineer title is okay, and you may have many elevated titles as well. It doesn't make any difference, and that you can say. Title is another part of engineering that depends upon what you are, how much you have done, what capacity one got in relation. I mean, again saying it's in relation, relative capacity, nothing is original. This is material world nowadays. It was not material world before. Now whole world is inclined towards material gains, material achievements. All, I cannot say one separate one. Tendency of humanity has become that money, or you can say money means material, because money is only a medium to exchange material. Actually, it's value of material that is important. So, okay, engineering is developing, science is developing, but major development is about, you can say, major development is about economy. Economy means nation, and economy means power to purchase, power to spend. Economy relates to every aspect of life, and engineering is another one aspect of that. So, as a thinker, we should have different approach altogether. When I'm saying engineering, it doesn't mean engineering only. It means relation to economy, economy of a nation, economy of a state, economy of a person. It relates to that. You make money, you save money, you earn money, and then you spend where? Either you spend all money on wastage world, or you spend your money to make some assets for yourself. That asset, you can say house, or commercial world, or whatever you think is your asset for your future support, your current support, and your generation support that has come. All that is related to money, wealth. We know it won't give satisfaction in life if you have wealth only, but wealth is very much part of this world, because all believe in wealth. Everybody believes in wealth. You can say 98% people believe in wealth. That if you have wealth, our tensions are gone. That's main point, you can say. If you are wealthy, you are, I know, many problems are over, and you get more problems which are more powerful, and you have to spend your time in solving them. And you keep on thinking how to make more money out of money. Before you did not have money, you thought how to get money for food, how to get money for this expense and that expense. Now you have everything. Your thought changes. Your school of contemplation changes, and you change your direction. I have plenty of money. I shouldn't worry about that. I am safe, so I can endeavor something. That's very important. So I can say, economy is not related to this way or that way. It is related to every part of life. What we eat is related to economy, and what we build is related to economy. No one can live without use of economy, and that's real what I understand is life. When we do, so we are going to do something, we are going to do this, we are going to do that, and we contract someone with something. We use a job. Do you accept this payment if you want to do this job? And you did this job, I'll give you this much payment. It's nothing but contract. Sorry. When we talk of contract, it's very important part of life, contract. It's not simply contract. You can say it's not simply contract. It's contract of effect. It's contract of effect. It's contract of construction. It's contract of design. It's contract of travel, or you can say contract of this and contract of that. And there is no one thing you can say that absolutely it is that. Engineering a profession, engineer as a professional, I think all engineers in all branches of engineering deal with contracting. I think in very in general we deal with contracting. Of course, in civil it's very much intensified, and we have to do almost all works through contracts. And not only in civil, it's everywhere. In mechanical, machines are manufactured and purchased and contracts of supply and designs and manufacture. The manufacturer is in industry, manufacturing industry. So whatever is available, they standardize, and we make our purchases depending on those specifications machines perform. So contract is nothing new in engineering industry. Now there is contracts of everything in society: insurance contract, health insurance, medical insurance, life insurance, travel contract, air flight, road travel, train travel, catering contract, marriage ceremony contract. You may say contract is very common activity, contracting. But there's a difference, contracting of higher value and contracting of lower value. Service contract, construction contract, or similarly many types of contracts. How far can we move on contracts? There are certain issues in contracts which we can say general, then guidance, then particular, and then securities, then bids, or you can say agreements. All work in unison. All work in unison, and that's where we say everything is different. Everything is different. That's our point of approach. Very with high power we have talked about contracts. And contract is a part of engineering. In fact, we may not have studied well, that is different point, or we did not have time to study that. That's also different. Because we think design is engineering, or execution is engineering, and contract we did not understand that time that it's also engineering. Because when there's a project of many billions, or you can say mega projects, where it's not in lakhs or in crores, it's in billions and trillions possibly. Such mega projects are not flight contract or bus contract. Those are world contract, you can say. A contract is a world of contracting itself. If you have a contract of billions of dollars or on some project, means it's not easy one. We have contract of construction, very mega project, you can say, having 2 lakh cubic meter concrete, having 3 lakh cubic meter concrete, 5 lakh cubic meter concrete, nuclear reactor plant, refinery plant, or some other byproduct production plant facility like that, you cannot simply say it's a normal contract. It's a specialized contract, we can say, just like special laws, we can say this is general law, this is statutory, but this is particularly meant for this purpose, so this is special law, we call it something. If your project is very much, specialized, very much technology based, means your project is a purpose based, custom based, that is to run some technology through that project. You're going to construct some process unit or some plant or some, you can say, whatever it is, where raw materials are converted to different types of materials useful for engineering industry or for life itself. I think that's very different one. You cannot equate them to very one or two or three page contract like we have in other parts of our life. I'm talking of that real contract which cannot be understood immediately, for which thorough study is required to be conducted. And if you do that, only then you can say I got something. It's not question only in our contracts. It's no, you have to decide this question. That's not contract here. Means it is something you have to involve every capacity, all capacity of yourself and those who are with you. And that capacity should give something to this world. And that contract I'm talking of. I'm talking of where long duration and long heavy quantity of concrete, heavy units, as well as quantity of materials you're going to consume permanently on that project. So that possible only when you have resources to get those materials, ingredients. Otherwise, if you don't have, you cannot do project also. It's not easy, I'm talking to digest, but it is. We always say proudly, I'm engineer or he has passed engineering. Yes, you are engineer, you have passed engineering. But where do you stand in life? Where do we stand? It's not in our country, in every country there's a drop of standards while they should raise, but there's dropping. Reason being, only reason is that we are not aware. We observe or we copy and paste. Other than this, we do nothing. So when I say contract is very much scientific, it's very much logical. So must be contract conditions, because every profession decides what to do. For me, contract is a hard hit. It's not document alone. You cannot consider only a document as contract. No. It's without document also, means you are going to pay someone for something that someone would do for you. Only this is meaning of contract. If you understand this point, there can be no conflict between employer and engineer. Employer and contractor. But conflict of interest works there and both become annoyed. Now, if you imagine a contract of so many thousands or so many lakhs cubic meter structural concrete, what shall happen to your mind? because just designing few cubic meters of concrete you have to go through lot of exercises. Of course there are formula, there are softwares nowadays. It won't be difficult for you to answer this. But I always go to answers. If you understand answers, it's nice. And if you do not understand, then you have to understand. A contract life is not very convenient if you want to stay in contracting. When we talk of contract, we talk of start to completion. We talk of start to completion. That is beauty of contract. Otherwise, there is no meaning of contract. If you say no, it's not that. No, it's not that. Yes. If contract starts but does not end, what shall we call it? If contract does not end and never expect it to end, this means this is not a contract. Contract is actually an arrangement between two parties. How to move with each other on some point of agreement, and both have to decide about the status of agreement. Carelessness in contract drawings, contract design, ignoring certain conditions without understanding meaning of that, and also inserting certain conditions which got nothing to do with your project. People will laugh on why you included that. Unnecessary. Because practical integrity of contract is very important. It's easy to understand all these points which I am telling in, in context. To begin with, if you say start something, move on that successfully in certain durations and then complete it. Say order. It's very easy to move in contemplation over all stages of contract or a project that's going to happen, and that would tell us what we should do. Hmm. When I say contract completion, what does it mean? You have to understand that. I was thinking on this. Is it complete project that was expected to be incorporated, or it is part contract? What is required in contract that must be achieved? So it's called contract is over. What percentage is achieved? That's also a point. That only this much we will achieve. We should realize this fact that beginning to completion is beauty of contract. It may be many years of contract, it may be 1 year of contract, it may be 6 months contract, it may be whatever duration it is mentioned. Completion is a must. And then consideration is a must. When we say completion, it means something great. This means contract is going to complete, and that is an achievement that some contract is going to complete. It's going to perform fully, it's going to give you confidence that you achieved something. When we say we have done something, it is to be completed, it is to be accepted by other party because we have complied with requirements. Then how to do that? We can say contractors should submit to engineer not less than you can say 42 days before date of contracts intends to commence test. Contractor submits to engineer not less than 42 days before before date of before date contractor intends to commence tests on completion. A detailed test program showing intended timing and resources required for these tests. Tests, very important aspect, very important action, or it is joint action you can say, means no test done, contract is not done. A detailed test program showing intended timing and resources required for this test. Engineer may review engineer may review proposed test program and may give a notice to contractor stating extent to which it does not comply with contract. Within 14 days after receiving notice, within 14 days after receiving notice, contractor shall revise this program gives no such notice within 14 days of no objection. Contractor shall not commence tests on completion until a notice of no objection is given or is deemed to have been given. Note on program. In addition to date shown in test program, contractor shall give a notice to engineer of not less than 21 days of date after which contractor shall be ready to test. You can say that contractor shall commence test on completion within 14 days after this date. On such day or days as engineer shall instruct, and shall proceed in accordance with contractor's test program or add test and completion for this after this date or on such days as engineer shall instruct, and shall proceed in accordance with contractor's test program to which engineer has so we can say as soon as works or sections have, in contractor's opinion, passed test on completion, contractor submit a certified report of test results to engineer. Engineer shall review such a report and may give a notice to contractor stating extent to which results of test do not comply with contract. If engineer does not give such a notice within 14 days after receiving results of test, engineer shall be deemed to have given a notice of no objection. In considering results of tests on completion, engineer shall make allowances for test for effects of any use of any part of works by employer on performance or other characteristics of works. Tests, first of all, we have to understand what kind of test we are talking. Which test we are talking? Tests, when we do some job, we do test. Whatever we do testing. During activities, when we perform activities of buildings or work, we say some work is done, it is to be approved, and that approval requires certain testing. Generally, we call all activities are to be tested, are to be approved. So what we do during test, we say this is first fix, this is second fix, this is final fix. Tests does not mean at once. There is a sequence of testing which depends on types of contract. How to do that? Every activity that we do during construction, it has to go through immediate testing. Then, particularly I'm talking of services. That's called first fix test, second fix test, and third fix or final fix test. These are break-off of tests, you can say. And there's a final testing and commissioning that we are talking of. If testing activity is continued and you keep on putting on more and more tests and approving, it doesn't mean your job is over. Because performance testing is something different. We did work testing, we did activity testing. It's now performance of work. How does it perform? Or we call it commissioning. Commissioning. To put project work into practice or into operation. When we are talking of obligations, we are not saying I have done this. No, we have to. We cannot delay tests. We should not. But there are ways, you know, there are issues, and everything happens on contracting and realize. If contractor has given a notice as contract's obligations that works on section as case may be are ready for tests and completion, these tests are unduly delayed by employer's personnel or by cause of for which employer is responsible. Interference with tests on completion shall apply. Interference on interference with tests on completion shall apply. Tests on completion are unduly delayed by contractor. Otherwise, you can say engineer may be giving in notice to contractor requiring contractor to carry out tests within 21 days after receiving notice. Contractor shall carry out tests on such day or days with, with this period of 21 days as contractor may fix, for which contractor shall give in prior notice to engineer of not less than 7 days. I again speak this. If tests on completions are unduly delayed by contractor, engineer may give notice to contractor requiring contractor to carry out tests within 21 days or days after receiving notice. Contractor shall carry out tests on such day or days within period of 21 days as contractor may. If contractor fails to carry out tests on completion within period of 21 days after second notice is given by engineer to contractor, employer personnel may proceed with tests. Contractor may attend and witness these tests within 28 days of these tests being completed. Engineer shall send a copy of test results to contractor, and if employer incurs additional costs as a result of such testing, employer shall be entitled subject to clause of defense, relates to this. If employer incurs additional cost as a result of such testing, employer shall be entitled, subject to claims for payment and or EOT, to payment by contractor of costs reasonably incurred on testing. Now, whether or not contractor attends these tests, on completion shall be deemed to have been carried out in presence of contractor, and results of this test shall be accepted as accurate. Retesting. If works or a section fails to pass test. If works or a section fail to pass tests on completion, defects and rejection shall apply. Engineer or contractor may require these failed tests and tests on completion on any related work be repeated under same you can say engineer or contractor may require these tests, field tests and tests on completion of related work be repeated under same terms and conditions. Such repeated tests be treated as test on completion for purpose of this test, this clause. If works or a section fail to pass test on completion, repeated under this retesting, agent shall be entitled to. Now this is a point, very important point. If works or a section fail to pass test on completion, we have to repeat. We can say order further repetition of tests on completion under retesting. Reject works if effect of failure is to deprive employer of substantially whole benefit of works, in which event employer shall have functioning remedies as are provided in subparagraph. You see, reject works if effects of failure is to deprive employer of substantially whole benefit of works. In which event employer shall have same remedies as are provided in subparagraph. Under contract, in which event employer shall have same remedy as is provided in failure. If you are taking our certificate, if employer so requests, employer so requests. In event of subparagraph, the contract shall then proceed in accordance with all other obligations under contract, and employer shall be entitled to claims for payment or extension of time to payment by contractor or reduction in contract price, failure to remedy defects respectively. Entitlement shall be without prejudice to other rights, without prejudice to any other rights of employer may have under contract or otherwise. Once work has been done, it has to be taken over for use. It has to be taken over for use, permanent use or operation or whatever you can say for what it was intended. And that must be very, you can say, criteria which must be operative when, because you have worked, then you have to take over work. Otherwise, there is no other meaning left. You have to take over. And when you take over successfully and contractor is off that project because project is over, you are using it now, so that's what we say, that stage of taking over, how we do that. That's also very important part of, important package of, is a part of a package that carries intention of transfer of relative ownership of everything to owner or the employer. Transfer of ownership, a kind of, you can say, it's not simply ownership. Relative ownership means now forever this employer shall become owner of that project forever, for good, and employer and contractor who was a temporary owner just for purpose of contract execution doesn't stand more than that as given over to employer. But responsibility still continues to be owned by let's say contractor for a while or for a duration of warranty or guarantee or maintenance or whatever this contract speaks about. Taking over, except as stated in clause failure to pass test and completion, taking over parts, or we can say interference with tests on completion, work shall be taken over by employer when We say works have been completed in accordance with contract. Number one condition is that works have been completed in accordance with contract. So we have to take over because works have been completed. That's part one. Works have been completed in accordance with contract. Or you can say works have been completed in accordance with contract, or you can say including passing of tests, passing of tests on completion and except as allowed in subparagraph below. What it says, we have to consider works have been completed in accordance with contract. That's main consideration. When works have been completed per contract, works have been completed in accordance with contract, including passing of tests on completion and except as otherwise allowed in subparagraph below. So if applicable, engineer has given or is determined to have given a notice of no objection to as-built records submitted under as-built records. As-built records, what is that? If you do not have, I explain to you again. As-built record is a term, is something, it's for permanent use, means it's done according to original drawings, or there's some changes to original drawings agreed and approved, those changes, and we call them during work, when you do work, there are some requirements, amendments, changes on original drawings, and those are recorded, duly approved by these two parties, by contractor and by employer through engineer. These red lines are recorded, and these red lines are then transferred to permanent drawings for maintenance purpose, and those drawings which clearly tell this is what this project is about, means what is built or constructed based on this information, and that's called as-built drawings. And if applicable, engineer has given or is deemed to have given a notice of no objection to operation and maintenance manuals. Under operation and maintenance manuals, if applicable, it says engineer has given or is deemed to have given a notice of no objection to operation and maintenance manuals. You can say maintenance manuals under operation and maintenance manuals. If applicable, contractor has carried out training as described under clause of training, and a taking over certificate of works has been issued or is deemed to have been issued in accordance with subclause. A taking over certificate for works has been issued or is deemed to have been issued in accordance with this subclause. So what is there? You can say 5 points are: first is work has been completed. Works have been completed in accordance with contract. That's first requirement. This is basic requirement. Work has been completed. Works have been completed in accordance with contract, including passing of tests on completion and except as allowed. They also, if applicable, engineer has given or is deemed to have given a notice of no objection to as-built records and submitted under as-built records, means records are there and submitted, and accepted means this as-built records accepted. Engineer has given, if applicable, to have given a notice of no objection to operations and maintenance manuals. Operations and maintenance manuals under subclause operation and maintenance manuals. If required, if permissible, means if there are machines, there are equipment which shall be used for operation of that project, that building or that structure, can be elevators, translators, travelators, or some other equipment of electrical, mechanical, all which are required for permanent use, and these need operations manuals and maintenance manuals, and whatever is there other than structures, other than finishes, which are live equipments. How shall we operate? Maybe cradle or electronic equipment, electrical equipment. All are all do come in the same range. So operations and maintenance manuals do work there. These must be part of dossiers. You can say dossiers means when we hand over project, it's not simply drawings of work or as-built drawings. Means we have to give complete dossiers, complete documents of all equipment that are stationary or dynamic or mobile on project or operative. Those documents comprise of operation and maintenance manuals also. And contractor has carried out training as described, training as well. That's a part of how to operate this equipment, or you can say system, or if there's technology inclusion in that, this technology must be taught to all staff or whatever staff demanded by engineer, and how to use that area. And of course, a taking over certificate for works has been issued, that employer has taken over works or deemed to have been issued in accordance with sub clause. So these are general, we can say general 5 points. A contractor may apply for a taking over certificate by giving a notice to engineer not more than 14 days before works will, in contractor's opinion, complete and ready for taking over. If works are divided into sections, contractor may similarly apply for taking over certificate for each section. If part of works, you can say, if certain part of works is taken over under taking over parts, taking over clause, taking over parts if not whole, if some parts of works. Remaining works or sections shall not be taken over until conditions described in 5 points above, where applicable, have been fulfilled. Now, engineer shall within 28 days after receiving contractor's notice either issue technical taking over certificate, to contractor, stating date on which works or sections were completed in accordance with contract, except for any minor outstanding work and defects as listed in taking over certificate, which will not substantially affect use of works or sections for that intended purpose, either until or whilst this work is completed and these defects are remedied. Again I say, issuing of technical takeover certificate, issuing of taking over certificate to contractor, stating date on which works or sections were completed in accordance with contract, except for whatever minor outstanding work and defects listed in taking over certificate, which will not substantially affect safe use of works or section for their intended purpose, either until or whilst this work is completed and these defects are remedied. Reject application by giving a notice to contractor with reasons. This notice shall specify work required to be done. Reject application by giving a notice to contractor with reason This notice shall specify work required to be done, defect required to be remedied, work required to be done, or defect required to be remedied, or documents required to be submitted by contractor to enable taking over certificate to be issued. So there are 3 points. One is you have to reject this. That is, notice shall specify work required to be done. Means it's rejected because you have to define and what required to be done, which work is left, you have to do it. Means this is work required to be done. Or second is defects required to be remedied. So work to be done, defects required to be remedied, or there is necessity of documents required to be submitted by contractor to enable taking over certificate to be issued. Contractor shall then complete. Contractor shall then complete Now, if engineer does not issue taking over certificate or rejects contractor's application within this period of 28 days, and if conditions described in subparagraph above have been fulfilled, works of section shall be deemed to have been completed in accordance with contract on 14th day after engineer receives contractor's notice of application and taking over certificate shall be deemed to have been issued. I repeat, if engineer does not issue taking over certificate or reject contractor's application within this period of 28 days, and if conditions described in these conditions above where applicable have been fulfilled, works of sections shall be deemed to have been completed in accordance with contract on 14th day after engineer receives contractor's notice of application, and taking over certificate shall be deemed to have been issued. Taking over parts now. Taking over is continuing here. Taking over, and this is an important activity. You can say handing over activity. This is closing of a contract activity. This is final performance of contract. You can say taking over means you are gradually, contractor is gradually handing over parts by parts if project is very big, and this is closing up of contract, or you can say definition of performance of contract. This is final top performance activity of contract. Engineer may at sole discretion of employer issue a taking over certificate for whatever part of permanent works. This is called engineer may at sole discretion of employer issue a taking over certificate for any part of permanent work. Employer shall not use any part of works other than as a temporary measure. Employer shall not use any part of works other than as a temporary measure, which is either stated in a specification or with prior agreement between employer and contractor, unless and until the engineer has issued a taking over certificate for this part. However, if employer does use any part of works before taking over certificate is issued, contractor shall give a notice to engineer identifying such part and describing such use, and that part shall be deemed to have been taken over by employer as from date on which it is used. Contractor shall cease to be liable for care of such part as from this date or use date when responsibility passes to employer. An engineer shall immediately issue a taking over certificate for this part and any outstanding work to be completed, including tests on completion and or defects to be remedied, shall be listed in this certificate. After engineer has issued a taking over certificate for that part, contractor shall be given earliest opportunity to take such steps as may be necessary to carry out outstanding work, including tests on completion and remedial work for whatever defects listed in certificate. Contractor shall carry out these works as soon as practicable, and in any case, in whatever case, before expiry date of relevant defects notification period, DNP we call it. If contractor incurs cost as a result of employer taking over and or using a part, contractor shall be entitled, subject to claims for payment and or EOT, that is extension of time, to payment of such cost plus profits. If engineer issues taking over certificate for whatever part of works, or if employer is deemed to have taken over a part under subparagraph above for any period of delay, if employer is deemed to have taken over parts under subparagraph above for whatever period of delay after date under subparagraph above, delay damages for completion of remainder of work shall be reduced. Similarly, delay damages for remainder of section, if any, or whatever in which this part is included, shall also be reduced. This reduction shall be calculated in proportion which value of part except value of outstanding works and the defects to be remedied bears to value of works, as case may be as a whole. I repeat, if engineer issues a taking over certificate for whatever part of works, or if employer is deemed to have taken over a part under this subparagraph above for any period of delay, you can say for any period of delay, question is after date under subparagraph above, delay damages for completion of remainder of works shall be reduced. Similarly, delay damages for remainder of section, if whatever it is in which this part is included, shall also be reduced. This reduction shall be calculated as proportion which value of part except value of any outstanding work or defects to be remedied bears to value of works or section, as case may be as a whole. Now, engineer shall proceed under agreement or determination to agree or determine this reduction, and for purpose of subclause, time limits, date engineer receives contractor's notice under this subclause shall be date of commencement of time limit for agreement. Provisions of this paragraph shall only apply to daily rate of delay damages and shall not affect maximum amount of these damages. Interference with tests on completion. Interference with test on completion. If contractor is prevented, you know what it says, if contractor is prevented. If contractor is prevented for more than 14 days, if contractor is prevented for more than 14 days, either a continuous period, either for a continuous period or multiple periods which total more than 14 days from carrying out tests of completion by employer's personnel or by a cause for which employer is responsible. Contractor shall give a notice to engineer describing such prevention. Employer shall be deemed to have taken over works or sections as case may be on date when tests on completion would have otherwise been completed. He shall immediately issue a taking over certificate for works on section. As case may be, repeat this, it's an important one. If contractor is prevented for more than 14 days, if contractor is prevented for more than 14 days, either a continuous period, either for a continuous period or multiple period, which total more than 14 days, from carrying out tests on completion by employer's personnel or by a cause for which employer is responsible. Contractor shall give a notice to engineer describing such prevention. Employer shall be deemed to have taken over works or section as case may be on date when tests on completion would otherwise have been completed, and engineer shall immediately issue a taking over certificate for works or section as case may be. After engineer has issued this takeover certificate, contractor shall carry out tests on completion as soon as practicable, and in whatever case before expiry date of defects notification period. Engineer shall give a notice to contractor of not less than 14 days of date after which contractor may carry out each of tests on completion. Thereafter, subclause contractor's obligation shall apply. If contractor suffers delay and or incurs cost as a result of being prevented from carrying out tests on completion, contract shall be entitled, subject to subclause, claims for payment and or EOT and or payment of such cost plus profits. Surfaces requiring reinstatement. Surfaces requiring reinstatement. Now, except as otherwise stated in taking over certificate, a certificate for a section or part of works shall not be deemed to certify completion of any or whatever ground or other surfaces requiring reinstatement. Except as otherwise stated in taking over certificate, a certificate for a section or part of works shall not be deemed to certify completion of whatever ground or other surfaces requiring reinstatement. defects after taking over, completion of outstanding works and remedying defects, completion of outstanding work and remedying defect. In order, in order that works and contractors documents, in order that works and contractors documents and each section and or part, in order that works and contractors documents and each section and or part shall be in condition requiring shall be in condition required by contract, fair wear and tear. You got it? Fair wear and tear. In order that works and contractors documents and each section and or part shall be condition required by contract, fair wear and tear, accepted by expiry date of relevant defects, notification period, or as soon as practicable thereafter, contractor shall complete whatever work which is outstanding, complete whatever work which is outstanding on relevant date of completion within time stated in taking over certificate or such other reasonable time as is instructed by engineer, or and execute all work required to remedy defects or damage of which a notice is given to contractor by or on behalf of employer on or before expiry date of defects notification period for works or sections or part as case may be. Again, contractor shall complete left work which is outstanding on relevant date of completion within times stated in taking over certificate or such other reasonable time as is instructed by engineer, and execute all work required to remedy defects or damage which a notice is given to contractor by on behalf of employer, contractor by on behalf of employer on behalf before expiry date of defects notification period for works on section of part as case may be. If a defect appears, including if it works fail to pass test after completion, if whatever or damage occurs during relevant defects notification period, a notice shall be given to contractor accordingly by or on behalf of employer promptly thereafter, which is contractor and employer's personnel shall jointly inspect defects or damages. Then contractor prepare a submit a proposal for necessary remedial work, and second, third and fourth paragraphs above the first sections apply. Cost of remedying defects. Cost, who shall bear this cost? Of course, we understand. All work under subparagraph completion of outstanding work and remedying defects, shall be executed at risk and cost of contractor if and to extent that work is attributed to a design, if included, of works for which contractor is responsible. What it says, all work under subparagraph completion of outstanding work and remedying defects shall be executed at risk and cost of contractor right? If and to extent that work is attributable to design. Design, if included, of works for which contractor is responsible. Plant materials or workmanship not being in accordance with contract. Or improper operation or maintenance which was attributable to matters for which contractor is responsible. Improper operation or maintenance, or improper operation or improper maintenance which was attributable to matters for which contractor is responsible, according to as-built records. Subclause operations and maintenance manuals and training means we had three done. One is as-built records, we built something, which means it's not working, it's improper, giving improper operation and maintenance, that's as-built. Other one is operation and maintenance manuals, and third one is training, where applicable or otherwise. Now, failure of contractor to comply with either other obligations under contract means non-compliance, that's called failure by contractor to comply with whatever other obligation under contract. Now, if contractor considers that work is attributable to whatever other cause, contractor shall promptly give a notice to engineer, and engineer shall proceed under agreement or determination to agree or determine cause. And for purpose of time limits, date of this notice shall be date of commencement of time limit for agreement if it is agreed or determined that work is attributable to a cause other than those listed. Variation by instruction shall apply as if such work had been instructed by engineer. Extension of defects notification period. Now we have to be little smart in understanding contracts, and this is what we are talking about in between, just to reintroduce what we are talking. This is means we can say that employer shall be entitled to an extension of DNP for works, means this is we are talking about employer, because if defect notification period is extended, means employer is benefited, not contractor. And if time of extension is given, extension of time is given, it is beneficial to contractor. So there are two ways. Work completion or employer seeks to get more defects notification period, this is natural. So if and to extend that works section, part or a major item of plant, as case may be, and after taking over cannot be used for intended purpose by reason of defects or damage which is attributable to any of matters under cost of remedying defects, and subject to claims for payment and or EOT. So employer shall be entitled to extension of time, extension of defects notification period for works of section part. However, in defects notification period shall not be extended by more than a period of 2 years. Defects notification period shall not be extended by more than a period of 2 years after expiry of defects notification period stated in contract data. So 2 years is limit in this case. If delivery and or erection of plant and or materials was suspended, if delivery and or erection of plant and or materials was suspended under subclause 8.9 or employer suspension, other than where cause of suspension is the responsibility of contractor, or subclause suspension by contractor, contractor's obligation under this clause shall not apply to any defects or damage occurring more than 2 years after DNP for works. Again I say, if delivery and or erection of plant and or materials was suspended under employer suspension, other than where cause of such suspension is responsibility of contractor, suspension by contractor. So contractor's obligations under this clause shall not apply to any defects or damage occurring more than 2 years after DNP for works of which plant and or materials form part would otherwise have expired. And failure to remedy defects is a very important part. Failure to remedy defects. Failure of remedying defects. If remedying of any defect, or I can say remedying of certain defect or damage under completion of outstanding works, and remedying defects is unduly delayed by contractor, a date may be fixed by or on behalf of employer on or by which defect damage is to be remedied. Let me just now, if remedy of any defect or damage under completion of outstanding works and remedying defects is unduly delayed by contractor, a date may be fixed by or on behalf of employer on or by which defect or damage is to be remedied. You can say, if remedying of any defect or damage under subclause completion of outstanding works and remedying defects is unduly delayed by contractor, a date may be fixed by or on behalf of employer on or by which defect or damage is to be remedied. A notice of this fixed date shall be given to contractor by or on behalf of employer, which notice shall allow contractor reasonable time, taking due regard of relevant circumstances, to remedy defects. Remedy defect or damage. If contractor fails to remedy defects or damage by date stated in this notice, and this remedial work was to be executed at cost of contractor, cost of remedying defects, employer may, at employer's sole discretion, carry out work or have work carried out by others, including whatever retesting in manner required under contract and at contractor's cost. But contractor shall have no responsibility for work. Employer shall be entitled, subject to claims for payment and or UT, to payment by contractor of costs reasonably incurred by employer in remedying defect or damage. Employer shall be entitled, subject to subclause, claims for payment and or UT, to payment by contractor of costs reasonably incurred by employer in remedying defects or damages. Except damaged or defective work, in which case employer shall be entitled, subject to claims for payment and UT, to a reduction in contract price. Reduction shall be in full satisfaction of this failure only, and shall be in amount as appropriate to cover reduced value of employer as a result of this failure. Repeat, except damaged or defective work, in which case employer shall be entitled, subject to claims for payment and or EOT, to a reduction in contract price. Reduction shall be in full satisfaction of this failure only, and be in amount as be appropriate to cover reduced value to employer as a result of this failure. Require engineer to treat that part of works which cannot be used for its intended purpose under contract by reason of this failure as an omission, as if such omission had been instructed under variation by instruction. Or terminate contract as a whole with immediate effect, and subclause termination for contractor's default shall not apply if defect or damage deprives employer of substantially whole benefit of works. Again, terminate contract as whole with immediate effect, and termination of contractor's default shall not apply if defects or damage deprives employer of substantially whole benefits of works. Employer shall then be entitled, subject to claims for payment of EOT, to recover from contractor all sums paid for works, plus financing charges and cost incurred in dismantling same, clearing site, and returning plant and materials to contractor. So these are 4 points. Number 1, if I repeat, if contractor fails to remedy defects in this head off, if failure to remedy defects we are talking, so it's very important. I repeat, whole, it's very important in this. If remedying any defect or damage under completion of outstanding works and remedying defects is unduly delayed by contractor, a date may be fixed by employer on or by which the effect damage is to be remedied and rectified. In notice of this fixed date shall be given to contractor by on behalf of employer, which notice be allow contractor reasonable time, taking due regard relevant circumstances to remedy defects or damage, If contractor fails to remedy defect or damage by date stated in this notice, and this remedial work was to be executed at cost of contractor, this remedial work to be executed at cost of contractor, the cost of remedying defects, employer may, at employer's sole discretion, carry out work, have work done by others, including retesting, in manner required under contract and at contractor's cost, but contractor shall have no responsibility for this work. Employer shall be entitled, subject to claims for payment and EOT, to payment by contractor of costs reasonably incurred by employer in remedying defect or damage, except damaged or defective work, in which case employer shall be entitled, subject to claims for payment and EOT, to a reduction in contract price, which reduction shall be in full satisfaction of this failure only, and be in amount as shall be appropriate to cover reduced value to employer as a result of this failure. Require engineer to treat whatever part of works which cannot be used for its intended purpose under contract by reasons of this failure as an omission, as if such omission had been instructed under variation by instruction. Terminate contract as a whole with immediate effect, and termination of contractor's default shall not apply if defects of damage of the price employer of substantially whole benefit of work. Employer shall then be entitled, subject to claims for payment and EOT, to recover from contractor all sums paid for works plus financing charges and costs, whatever costs incurred in dismantling same, clearing site and returning plant materials to contractor. Exercise of discretion by employer under paragraphs above shall be without prejudice to whatever other rights of employer may have under contract or otherwise. Remedying of defective work off-site. Remedying of defective work off-site. Remedying of defective work off-site. Okay. If during defects notification period, contractor considers that whatever defect or damage in plant cannot be remedied expeditiously on site, contractor shall give a notice with reasons to employer requesting consent to remove defective or damaged plant off-site for purposes of repair. This notice shall clearly identify each item of defective or damaged plant and give details of according to following statement. defect or damage to be repaired, place to which defective or damaged plant is to be taken for repair, transportation to be used, and insurance cover for such transportation. Proposed inspections and testing of site, plant duration required before repaired plant be returned to site, plant duration for reinstallment or reinstallation and retesting of repaired plant, testing by contractor and or testing on completion if applicable. Repair or damage mentioned, repaired, we just prescribe that. Place to which defective or damaged plant is to be taken for repair, transportation to be used, and insurance cover for such transportation. Proposed inspections and testing of off-site. Proposed inspections and testing off-site. Plant duration required before repair plant be returned to site. Plant duration for reinstallation and retesting of repaired plant, testing by contractor and or test on completion if applicable. Contractor shall also provide any further details that employer may reasonably require. When employer gives consent, which consent shall not relieve contractor from any obligation or responsibility under this clause. Contractor may remove from site such items of plants as are defective or damaged. I repeat, when employer gives consent, which consent shall not relieve contractor from its obligation or responsibility under this clause, contractor may remove from site such items of plant as are defective or damaged. As a condition of this consent, employer may require contractor to increase amount of performance security by full replacement cost of defective or damaged plant. It says, as a condition of this consent, employer may require contractor to increase amount of performance security by full replacement cost of defective or damaged plant. Now within 7 days, this is further tests after remedying defects. Now within 7 days of completion of work of remedying of any defect, within 7 days of completion of work of remedying relevant defect or damage, contractor shall give a notice to engineer describing remedial work, section, part and or plant, and propose repeated tests. Under test on completion, within 7 days after receiving this notice, engineer shall give notice on to contractor either agreeing with such proposed testing or instructing repeated tests that are necessary to demonstrate that remedied work, section, parts of plant comply with contract. If contractor fails to give such a notice within 7 days, engineer may give a notice to contractor within 14 days after defect or damage is remedied. Instructing repeated tests that are necessary to demonstrate that the remedied work, section, parts, or plant comply with contract. If contractor fails to give notice, such notice within 7 days, engineer may give a notice to contractor within 14 days after defect or damage is remedied. Instructing repeated tests that are necessary to demonstrate that remedied works, section, part, and or plant comply with contract. All repeated tests under this subclause shall be carried out in accordance with terms applicable to previous tests, except that they shall be carried out at risk and cost of party liable under cost of remedying defects for cost of remedial work. All repeated tests under this clause shall be carried out in accordance with terms applicable to previous tests, except that they shall be carried out at risk and cost of party liable under cost of remedying defects or cost of remedial work. Right of access after taking over. Right of access after taking over means this is a handing post contract, you can say, post contract type entry. Something very of that, so you can say under, you can say until date 28 days after issue of performance certificate. Until date 28 days after issue of performance certificate, contractor shall have right of access to works, means post handover 28 days, 4 weeks. Contractor shall have right of access to works as is reasonably required in order to comply with clause, except as may be inconsistent with employer's reasonable security restrictions. Except as may be inconsistent with employer's reasonable security restrictions. Whenever contractor intends whatever part of works during relevant TNP or defects notification period, contractor shall request access by giving a notice to employer describing parts of works to be accessed, reasons for such access, and contractor's preferred date for access. This notice shall be given in reasonable time in advance of preferred date for access, taking due regard for all relevant circumstances, including employer's security restrictions. So repeat, what shall contractor do? Contractor shall request access. Contractor shall request access, right? Request access because of security reason. You have to do, though you are free for 28 days. Contractor shall request access. Employer now director in charge of that operational project is in the use, so permission is to be obtained from employer. Contractor shall request access by giving a notice to employer describing parts of works to be accessed, reason for such access, and contractor's preferred date for access. This notice shall be given in reasonable time in advance of preferred date for access, taking due regard of all relevant circumstances, including employer security restrictions. After receiving contractor's notice, employer shall give a notice to contractor either stating employer's consent to contractor's request or proposing a reasonable alternative date with reasons. If employer fails to give this notice within 7 days, employer shall be deemed to have given consent to contractors access on preferred date stated in contractor's notice. If contractor incurs additional cost as a result of whatever unreasonable delay by employer in permitting access to works by contractor, contractor shall be entitled, subject to claims for payment and or EOT, to payment of whatever such cost plus profits. Contractor to search. Contractor to search. Contractor shall, if instructed by engineer, search for cause of whatever defect. Under direction of engineer, contractor shall carry out search on dates stated in engineer's instruction or other dates agreed with engineer. Unless defect is to be remedied at cost of contractor, under cost of remedying defects, contractor shall be entitled, subject to claims for payment and or EOT, to payment of cost plus profit of such a bit. Unless defect is to be remedied at cost of contractor, under cost of remedying defects, contractor shall be entitled, subject to claims for payment and or EOT, to repayment of cost plus profit of such. If contractor fails to carry out search in accordance with this clause, search may be carried out by employer personnel. Contractor shall be given a notice of date when such a search be carried out, and contractor may attend at contractor's own cost. If defect is to be remedied, cost of contractor, under the subclause cost of remedying defects, employer shall be entitled, subject to subclause claims for payment and EOT, to payment by contractor of costs of search reasonably incurred by employer. Performance certificate, very important one. Performance of contractor's obligations under contract shall not be considered to have been completed until engineer has issued performance certificate to contractor, stating date on which the contractor under contract. issued performance certificate to contractor stating date on which contractor fulfilled contractor's obligations under contract. Engineer shall issue performance certificate to contractor with, with a copy to employer and to DAAB, Disputes Avoidance and Adjudication Board, within 28 days after latest of expiry dates of defects notification period, or as soon as thereafter as contractor has. Again, engineer shall issue performance certificate to contractor with a copy of employer and to DAB within 28 days after latest of expiry dates of defects notification periods, or as soon as thereafter as contractor has supplied all contracts documents and completed and tested all works including remedying defects in accordance with contract. If engineer fails to issue performance certificate within this period of 28 days, performance certificate shall be deemed to have been issued on day 28 days after date on which it should have been issued as required by the clause. Only performance certificate shall be deemed to constitute acceptance of works. Performance certificate. Okay, that's nice. talking of performance certificate. There's the gap in that. No problem. Now I'm back. Performance certificate talking of. So we have talked of the certificate. We have talked of conditions. Now only performance certificate shall be deemed to constitute acceptance of works. And when we say what of that, unfulfilled obligations after issue of performance certificate, each party shall remain liable. Each party shall remain liable after issue of performance certificate. Each party shall remain liable for fulfillment of whatever application which remains unperformed at that time. For purposes of determining nature and extent of unperformed obligations, contract shall be deemed to remain in force. Very important paragraph, I repeat. After issue of performance certificate, each party shall remain liable for fulfillment of whatever obligation which remains unperformed at that time. For purposes of determining nature and extent of unperformed obligations, contract shall be deemed to remain in force. However, in relation to plant, contract shall not be liable for whatever defects or any defects or damage occurring more than 2 years after expiry of D and P, defects notification period, for plant, except if prohibited by law or in whatever case of fraud, gross negligence, deliberate default, or reckless misconduct.